Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Python arrays. But unfortunately, Python does not actually have built-in support for arrays. So for this video, we're just going to be using lists as arrays. But if you really want to use an array, you should probably import a library like the NumPy library. But yeah, today we're just going to be working with lists as arrays. So first of all, an array is a special type of variable because it can hold multiple values. So if I were to create an array called cars and then set it equal to Ford, Volvo, and BMW. So as you can see, we have this one list variable called cars that we're using as an array, and we have three different values: Ford, Volvo, and BMW. And these three are different values. They're separated by a comma, and they have closing double quotation marks. And then it might not look very useful right now because there's only three cars, but if we wanted to go through every single car and search for like a specific value, then creating a list would be useful. Especially if there are more cars. Like, I'm sure there's a bunch of different car brands, maybe like hundreds. In that case, you would need a list. You don't want to create 100 variables, right? So first thing we're going to talk about is how to refer to an array element, which means we're just going to be accessing one of these three values for this example. And so if I were to create a variable called x and set that equal to, let's say I want to set that equal to Ford, then I would type in the name of the array or list, which is cars, followed by these brackets. And inside these brackets, I'm going to put what is known as an index value. And these index values, all they are just each of these values in the list are assigned an index value. And Ford would be 0, and it just counts up from there. So Volvo would be 1, and BMW would be 2. So if we want to access Ford, I'm going to put 0. Now you can see when I print x, at the right you can see it prints out Ford because we just accessed the first element of cars, which is Ford, and set that equal to x, and then we printed it. And if we wanted to modify it, we would do the exact same thing, but the other way around. So we would say cars, the name of the array or list, and then the index value inside brackets. So if I wanted to edit Ford and change that to Toyota, I would simply just set that equal to a string called Toyota. And now if I print out the cars array, you can see at the right, our value of Ford has now been changed to Toyota. And then another thing we can do is something that's really useful is we're able to find the length of an array simply by typing in len, which is easy to remember because it like stands for length, and then opening parentheses, and then you're gonna put in the name of the array. So inside these parentheses, you put the name of your list or array. And now if I try printing out x, you're gonna get 3 because 1, 2, 3. There's 3 values in this array cars. And another thing that's really useful is that although the indexes always start at 0, the last index is always changing, right? Because it depends on how big the list is. But a good way to remember how to find the last item of a list is simply by using the length function, and then if you subtract 1, you'll get the index value of the last item in the list. So currently our length is 3, right? But because we start counting from 0, Ford is 0, Volvo is 1, and BMW is 2. So if we subtract 1 from 3, we would get 2, which shows how this, works out. And then there's really not much of a point of a list or array if we can't loop through the array, right? If we can't search through each item in the array. So to do that, we're going to be using a for loop. So for x in cars, and then colon. So if you don't remember, x is just the variable, the temporary variable we're creating, and we're setting x equal to each of these individual values one by one. So if I were to print x inside of this for loop, you can see it first prints out Ford, then it moves on to Volvo, and then BMW. So if we actually think about what's going on in the code, first Ford is set equal or x is set equal to Ford, then it prints out x, Ford, and then x is equal to Volvo, then it prints Volvo out, and then x is equal to BMW, and then it prints BMW out. And since there's no more values in this array cars, it's gonna get out of the array after that. So that's basically how you loop through an array. And then if we want to actually add array elements, we can simply use the append method. So cars.append. And you can remember append because, well, the English definition of append is to add. But because it starts with an A, you can kind of, I guess, think about it similarly to adding. So if I wanted to add Honda, I would do cars.append and then Honda inside of the parentheses. And now if I were to print cars again, you can see that Honda was added at the end right over here. And then there's a few things you can do to delete or remove array elements. The first option is to use a method called pop. And all of these methods, except for length, are using dot. So you can see I put the name of the array, and then I do dot, and then the name of the method. So cars.pop. And then if I put in a 1 right here, hopefully you can see that Volvo would be removed, because once again this is the index value, and index values start counting from 0. So Ford is 0 again, Volvo is 1, and BMW is 2. So if we did cars.pop 1, it would get rid of Volvo. And if you don't trust me, I'll print it out, and look, Ford and BMW are here, but Volvo was removed. And there's also another way to remove items, but this time it is remove. So cars.remove, and instead of an index, you actually need to type in the value you want to remove. So instead of 0, 1, 2, you would type in Ford, or you would type in Volvo, just depending on which one you want to remove. So if I wanted to remove Volvo again, instead of typing 1, I would type in Volvo. Remember, that's the difference between pop and remove. So pop, you need to put in the index, but remove, you gotta put in the actual value. So if I run that, you can see that once again Volvo is gone, and yeah, that's how you remove specific elements from a list. And there's tons of other methods that we're going to talk about, so let's go into the next ones. So cars.clear, this one, you guys can try to guess what it does, but I'll just print out the result to see, or I mean to show you guys. So at the right, you guys see some empty brackets, which shows that the clear method actually just gets rid of all the values in the given array that we said. And then there's also another one called copy. And for this one, I'll create a variable called cars2 equals cars.copy. And now let's try printing out cars2. As you can see, cars2 is literally just simply a copy of cars right here. So we copied it and then set it equal to cars2. And then next, we're going to be talking about the count method. So, alright, let me fix this. So the count method, this one I need to set equal to a variable called x. So this one is going to give us the number of elements that are in the array or list that are equal to the value I put in these parentheses. So if I were to type in Ford, and let's print out x here, we would get 1 because there's only one Ford in this array. And let's try H. There's no H in here, right? So it says 0. And then we can also test out BMW, and it'll give us 1 because there's one BMW in our list. And next, let's talk about extend. So extend basically, and let me erase this again. So cars.extend, and you can see how all of these are dot and then the name of the method with parentheses. So for this one, extend is used for when you have another array or another list. So cars2, and then I'll just create one with Toyota, and then this time I'll say cars.extend cars2. And as you can see, cars2 was added straight to the end of cars, which is why we see Toyota getting printed out, even though we only printed out cars. So hopefully that makes sense. And next, we're going to talk about the index function. So let me go back to x equals, and we're going to be printing x. So index, cars.index, and this we put in the value, not the index value, but one of these values like Ford or Volvo, and this is going to give us the index. So 0, Ford is 0, remember we start counting from 0, and then BMW is 2, right? Because 0, 1, 2. So that's how .index works. And then now we have insert. So for this one, we're going to go back to printing out cars. We don't need to set that equal to anything. And now we're going to type insert. So for this one, we're gonna have two parameters finally. So we're gonna be typing two things separated by a comma in the parentheses. The first thing is the index that we want to insert the thing into. So if I want to insert an object or an item into index 1, and the car is called, let's see, a Tesla, then if I run this, you can see now in the position 1, Tesla is got put in, and everything else, including the one that was there before, was pushed to the right. So Volvo and BMW were both pushed to the right, while Ford's remains the same. And then there's two final ones. The first one is reverse, and this just switches the order into backwards. So right now we have Ford, Volvo, BMW, and you guys can try to guess what's gonna print out. 3, 2, 1. Yep, you guys got it. It's BMW, Volvo, then Ford, because we're just reversing the order of our list. And finally, we have sort. And I'm not sure if this is going to work with strings, but let's see if it sorts alphabetically. So yeah, it looks like it's sorted correctly. BMW is first because B is, second letter of the alphabet. F in the middle and V at the very end. So this pretty much sums up arrays, and hopefully you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next one.